It's Wednesday, November 22. In the headlines, reduction in JUTC bus fares. In business news, TAJ says month-end Saturday business yields over $100 million in revenue. Regionally, regional leaders express willingness to invest in Liat. Internationally, 4-day pause in fighting between Israel and Hamas begins Thursday. And in sports, Reggae Boys qualify for Nations League semifinals. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. Commuters who travel with the Jamaica Urban Transit Company, JUTC, should be seeing a reduction in fares. Finance and Public Service Minister Dr. Nigel Clark announced a temporary reduction in the regular fees for the JUTC in Parliament on Tuesday. Regular fees will be reduced from $100 to $70 for children, from $30 to $25. The fares for pensioners will also be reduced from $40 to $30. Dr. Clark said that changes in the JUTC fares are part of measures to dampen the impact of the fare hike in October on the overall inflation rate. Minister of Science, Energy, Telecommunications and Transport Daryl Vaz addressed the development at Wednesday's post-cabinet press brief.
This does not come as a surprise to me, because you'll recall that I did make a comment at the time when the increase was made to say that I realized, and the cabinet did realize, of the inflationary effect that would happen in relation to the fare increases, as transportation has a significant inflationary factor, especially public transportation.
In April 2024, regular fees will again be decreased to $50, children's fares to $20, and pensioners to $25. Minister Clark says the measures announced in the afternoon on Tuesday were a follow-up to a commitment by the Transport Minister to mitigate the impact of the fare increase on consumers. Again,
it shows that when there's a joined-up approach in governance, obviously, it works better for the people, especially in light of the fact that in one instance there was an increase which has led to a decrease in another area of the transport sector, and any decrease is welcome.
The decrease does not affect operators of private public transport. So the question was asked about the number of persons who will benefit from this decrease. Minister Vaz notes the deficiencies in the operation of the JUTC, specifically the lack of sufficient buses for certain routes.
The last survey shows about 145,000 passengers being transported in the KTMR on a daily basis. Of that, 60,000 is on the buses, which will be the JUCC factor. Out of 145,000. And as you know, we already have a deficiency in the amount of buses that we have. So with the increase in buses, which has been stated and is far advanced in the process, we're looking to put 100 buses in the fleet of the JUTC for the calendar year, not the financial year, the calendar year 24, could be as early as June.
He notes that the JUTC will experience an increase in the number of passengers with the decrease in fares.
The question that has been raised also, obviously, is how is JUTC going to deal with the additional pressure of the passenger load? And that is a challenge, but everything in life has challenges. So you will definitely see people wanting to benefit from the fare decrease, and then obviously move away from the current transport which they take now, which is hackney carriage or taxi, to JUTC. So we're going to have to see how we can maneuver. There are some buses that we are trying to refurbish to get them back into the system. And of course, the average age of the buses is 12 to 14 years. So the reliability is an issue. So we may just have to make good with what we can make out of the existing fleet and those vehicles those buses that are down. But to say again and reiterate that we're moving in the right direction.
The finance minister told his parliamentary colleagues that the government was advised by the Bank of Jamaica that as a result of the adjustment in PPV fares, the central bank was expecting a reversal of the downward trend in annual inflation starting in November 2023. $1.4 billion has been earmarked for a constituency-based mitigation and cleaning program. $22 million will be allocated for each constituency to undertake minor civil works and public sanitation at the end of the month, which is the end of the hurricane season. The matter was addressed by Prime Minister Andrew Holness during a statement to the House of Representatives on Tuesday.
The initial damage assessment estimate by the NWA is somewhere in the region of 409 million Jamaican dollars. We have had damage estimates before which have been far more significant than this, so we are very grateful that though there was damage, it was not of a very significant extent.
He stated that letters have already been sent out to all members of Parliament explaining how the program would work.
Road rehabilitation, the allocation there is $10 million. No reallocation is permitted from this category. So the minimum that you can spend is $10 million. However, a maximum of $5 million may be transferred from other areas to road rehabilitation, allowing for a total maximum utilization of $15 million.
$3 million has been allocated for garbage collection, and no reallocation is permitted from this component. The National Works Agency and the National Solid Waste Management Authority have been instructed to use the fund to collect garbage, clean critical drains for road patching, debushing, and sanitation.
We want, for this year in particular, because of the dengue outbreak, we want our MPs to focus as much as possible on removing vector sites, which are usually sites where water collects in garbage and open water storage. So as much as we can, we should seek to remove bulky waste from the environment. Bear in mind, Madam Speaker, that earlier this year, in fact a few weeks ago, I had announced a $2 million allocation per constituency targeted at this very thing. So MPs within this period would have approximately $5 million to do this kind of work in constituencies.
The 16-year-old B.B. Koch High School student who is accused of beating a younger fellow student unconscious has been charged with assault occasioning grievous bodily harm. The student, whose name has not been released because he is underage, is to appear in the St. Elizabeth Parish Court on January 11, 2024. The accused student is charged because of a September 28 incident which sparked national outrage. On that day, he punched the complainant in both eyes, then kicked him in the head while both were at the Junction St. Elizabeth-based B.B. Koch High School. According to the allegations, the attack took place after the complainant accidentally stepped on the accused boy's shoes. The complainant was subsequently caught in a viral video being carried to a doctor's office by 5 other schoolmates following the incident. Time now for the business report with Danita Rodney.
Tax Administration Jamaica THA is reporting an approximately $102 million revenue yield from its Saturday month-end operations since 2021. This figure underscores the take-up by business persons and individuals who have been utilizing the convenience of the authority's Saturday business operations. As part of its continued provision of services every last Saturday of the month, the following tax offices will operate this Saturday between the hours of 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. St. Andrew Constant Spring, Montego Bay, Mandeville, St. Anne's Bay, and Savannah Lamar. The Portmore Tax Office will continue its usual weekly Saturday operations from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. Taxpayers are reminded that payments can be made via the authority's website at jamaicatax.gov.jm. Now for your market updates. In foreign exchange trading for Tuesday, November 21, the US dollar sold for an average of $156.40. The Canadian dollar ended trading at $114.14. The pound sterling traded for $195.64, and the euro sold for $172.87. In JSE trading, the JSE index advanced by over 482 points. The junior market index declined by over 15 points. The combined market index advanced by over 320 points, and the All Jamaican Composite Index advanced by over 1,587 points. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 108 stocks, of which 43 advanced, 42 declined, and 23 traded firm. Stocks advanced for AS Bryden & Sons Holdings Limited, Access Financial Services Limited, and AMG Packaging and Paper Company Limited. Stocks declined for 138 Student Living Jamaica Limited, Virgin Paints Jamaica Limited, and CAC 2000 Limited. Trading firm were Cargo Handlers Limited, Caribbean Assurance Brokers Limited, and Dolphin Cove Limited. The overall volume leaders were One-on-One Educational Services Limited with over 2 million units, Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares, and Alaska Distributors Limited with over 1 million units. In regional stocks, in Trinidad and Tobago, Calypso Macro Index Fund posted a volume of 171 shares. On the Barbados Stock Exchange, Goddard Enterprises Limited was the volume leader with 7,000 shares. They were followed by Epic Caribbean Property Fund, the Valley Fund, which traded 4,000 shares. In regional business, in Trinidad and Tobago, an EMoney app to facilitate financial transactions between friends and family has been officially launched, and the owners of Pesh Money have high hopes that it will catch on locally.
Pesh Money is a service that allows friends and family to send money to each other using a smartphone. The app connects to one's bank account and sends or receives money through the mobile wallet. Owner and founder Simon Fortuné said the service is focused on person-to-person as per the license from the central bank rather than incorporating businesses.
Unless you trust the system to pay your friends and family, once you have that trust that it works, then businesses will follow after that.
He said users firstly need to register one's banking info on the app and can transfer funds to the Pesh wallet, where person-to-person instant transactions can be made to connected friends or family.
And access to that data is absolutely locked down to just the people that need it. So we don't just have anyone accessing it. But it is protected, securely encrypted.
Mr. Fortuné said for now there's a limit of $1,000 per transaction, while maximum transactions per month and wallet balance remain at $20,000.
During the budget, the minister mentioned that those limits were going to change, which is great.
The central bank assured that these e-money transactions are regulated.
The central bank, however, is committed to ensuring that the sector is adequately regulated and that consumer funds are safe and remain confident in the national payment system.
Pesh Money only supports TT currency and local banks, and while there is no registration or person-to-person transaction fees, there is a $5 flat fee when debiting or crediting one's Pesh wallet using their bank account. Sonolala, TTT News.
In international business, U.S. stocks dipped and gold touched a 2-week high, while minutes from the Federal Reserve's most recent meeting show the central bank is in a position to proceed carefully.
Wall Street's main indexes ended lower on Tuesday, with the S&P 500 and NASDAQ snapping 5-session winning streaks after disappointing outlooks from retailers weighed on stocks. The Dow and S&P 500 each shed about 0.2%, while the NASDAQ shed 0.6. Minutes from the latest Federal Reserve meeting showed officials taking a cautious approach on interest rates, saying they would raise them only if inflation did not continue to tick down. But Scott Ladner, Chief Investment Officer at Horizon Investments, says the central bank should consider lowering rates as soon as April of 2024.
When the Fed says higher for longer, they're talking about keeping rates at this, these kind of 5 to 5.5% levels for pretty much all of next year. We think that is very unlikely because, we do see inflation coming down pretty quickly, pretty predictably, frankly. And as inflation comes down, the Fed maintaining rates where they are is actually becoming more restrictive through time. This is not a Fed that needs to become more restrictive if they're winning on the inflation battle, and they're seeing an economy which is starting to slow a little bit, which it is.
In company news, shares of Nvidia slipped from an all-time high on Tuesday and fell further in after-hours trading following the chipmaker's quarterly results. Nvidia forecast quarterly revenue above Wall Street's estimates, but also warned that sales to China and the Middle East would slow due to export controls. In retail news, shares of Kohl's shed more than 8.5% after the department store chain missed third-quarter sales estimates, and Best Buy also dipped after flagging weakening consumer demand heading into the holiday season.
In market data for oil prices slipped on Wednesday in quiet pre-U.S. Thanksgiving holiday trading as the market awaited news on the output cuts from the OPEC Plus producers group and looked for confirmation of a sharp buildup in U.S. crude stocks. Brent crude futures fell 95 cents to $81.50 a barrel, and West Texas Intermediate crude futures were down 92 cents to $76.85. And that was the business report on PBCJ. I'm Danita Rodney.
Thanks, Danita. In regional news, in Antigua and Barbuda, some regional heads of government say they are willing to invest in the rejuvenation of Liat, while others say they are awaiting concrete proposals before deciding.
Prime Minister Honorable Gaston Brown says he is cautiously optimistic that there is now a greater inclination on the part of his colleagues to invest in the Antigua-based carrier. The heads of government spoke exclusively with ABS News on their way back from the inaugural Saudi CARICOM summit.
Somewhat of an appetite. I don't necessarily want to quote any of my colleagues, but I believe that on the basis that we get this airline off the ground this new year 2020, that the appetite for some level of equity participation would increase, and I'm quite sure we'll see a number of our colleagues coming on board.
Cautious optimism from Prime Minister Honorable Gaston Brown regarding interest from his colleague heads of government in providing support for Liat. The government is moving to get Liat 2020 into the skies following the rescue of the airline from liquidation. I asked some of Prime Minister Brown's sub-regional colleagues whether they are now more sanguine on support for Liat.
Will your government commit to invest in Liat financially?
Of course, certainly. Certainly. I think whatever entity we can bring in, Liat and others, Dominic is prepared to play its part because it's so crucial for all of us, not only Dominic, but the entire region.
We've not got any concrete proposals yet from Liat, but we're looking, but the goal is to bring back interregional travel to where it was before.
If you get a concrete proposal from Liat, would your government invest in it?
Consider based on what's there. We will consider all options. We have to. We need it. We'll consider all options.
My government is willing to invest in any Caribbean airline that will provide us with services, particularly within the OECS. And I'm going to stress the OECS a little because we're here in Barbados, and I think we appreciate that islands like Barbados, Trinidad to some extent have far significant better connectivity than the OECS. I mean, if I want to get to Dominica, St. Lucia, Antigua, St. Kitts, it's a nightmare. In case Antigua and St. Kitts, we have to literally go to Miami first sometimes to come. So I'm certainly willing to invest in an airline, including that, once we're able to make sure that it's run properly. I'm agnostic about the name of the airline or where the airline emanates from once it's able to serve the OECS properly.
In terms of your take on Antigua Barbuda's efforts to keep it alive, keep it in the air, well, at least in a minimalist fashion?
Well, it's commendable because at the end of the day, I think it's clear that Prime Minister Brown, I would probably say, and he said so openly, he's not agnostic about which airline. I think he clearly supports Liat for obvious reasons. It's been, in a sense, home, and he has been home on one of the main bases, and in a sense, it's the only base now. So he obviously has implications for Antigua's economy as well. So in that sense, no one could disagree with him for doing all his best to support the airline and to make sure it continues flying.
I have not received anything official as yet, so I would not comment there upon. But however, I wish any effort success that is in the spirit of resolving the interregional traffic.
Right, but I just want to get promising whether or not your government would be in a position to contribute. Would your government commit to contributing
I know
financially?
you are trying to get me to say that, but I'm waiting to see what is it to be presented. I cannot speak to that unless the Prime Minister is here and I guess he will present something to us. So I would like to see what is being presented. Of course, in the spirit of working together to resolve the interregional travel issue.
As Air Peace is set to take a majority stake in LIAT 2020, a region dogged by air travel woes will be eager for less turbulence.
News from Grenada. World leaders will gather in the United Arab Emirates in less than 10 days for this year's Global Climate Summit, where they will meet to discuss their plans to combat the climate crisis. The Caribbean Development Bank promises to do its part in the meeting.
The Caribbean Development Bank, CDB, says it will continue to advocate for access to adequate and affordable financing for Caribbean nations and other small island developing states, SIDS, such as Grenada, at the upcoming United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28. The CDB's message at COP28 will be structured around 6 key themes: investment, facilitation, adaptation, collaboration, implementation, and integration. During the 2-week event, members of the CDB delegation will participate in a number of side events around topics such as climate finance, trade policy, energy transition, renewable energy investments, and more. The delegation will include President Dr. Hyginus Jean Leon, Coordinator Joseph Williams, Honorable Philip Edwards Davis Casey, Prime Minister of the Bahamas, Ms. Mafalda Duarte, Executive Director of the Green Climate Fund, Graham Watkins, Chief of the Climate Change Division, Inter-American Development Bank, Valerie Isaac, Coordinator of the Environmental Sustainability Unit, Dr. Colin Young, Executive Director of the Caribbean Community Climate Change Center, Honorable Roosevelt Skerritt, Prime Minister of Dominica, and Mr. Andrew Hurst, Executive Director at the Climate Finance Global Affairs Canada. Ahead of the recent Small Island Developing States SIDS high-level dialogue on climate change in Grenada, Prime Minister Deacon Mitchell had called on SIDS states to form a united front ahead of COP28.
But one of the key reasons for having a pre-COP meeting by heads of government in the region is for us to really sort of ham out, what are the key talking points, what are the key initiatives that are important to us, so that when we get to Dubai, we, as much as possible, are all speaking from the same page. So there are a couple of key things that are important to us. I would start first with the question of loss and damage, because it is quite clear that climate change causes unimaginable loss and damage to almost every Caribbean island. We can start from Grenada in the south to the Bahamas in the north. When we have these massive hurricanes, we are left with having to pick up the pieces. We all know that as a result of the warming temperatures, it's having significant impacts on all of us.
COP28 will take place in Dubai from November 30th to December 12th, 2023. Reporting for GBN News, Beverly Telesford.
Belize has joined a list of countries that have severed diplomatic ties with Israel over the war in Gaza. On Tuesday, the government issued a statement reiterating its call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza to facilitate humanitarian aid. Belize has also announced the suspension of all diplomatic activities in Tel Aviv and the withdrawal of accreditation for Israel's ambassador. In an exclusive interview with News 5, Israel's Deputy Director General for Latin America, Jonathan Peled, condemned Belize's position, saying that Belize has surrendered to terrorists.
Well, first of all, we deeply regret this decision by the government of Belize. We believe that this is a one-sided and biased decision, which we are totally against. And we believe it's counterproductive. And we're seriously concerned that this is a departure from the principles that we believe that Belize shares with the democratic free world. And that is to stand very firmly against terrorism in all its forms and to unilaterally take action against the side that has been attacked and that is rightfully defending itself is contrary to what we believe is right or the right thing to do. And an endorsement of this kind of the other side is for us unacceptable. This is a very unfortunate, if not evil, way of calling a terrorist organization that calls for the open destruction of the state of Israel, that invaded Israel on the 7th of October and slaughtered, tortured, maimed, burned, and raped 1,400 Israelis and abducted another 240 of them. We have now in captivity 240 young kids and pregnant women, old men, among them, by the way, 30 kids under the age of 6, and 31 Latin Americans. So this is not only an Israeli problem, this is an international problem. So I do not understand how anyone can endorse such an action and how anyone can be as ignorant as to call this a resistant agreement. Hamas is worse than ISIS. Hamas has been condemned by most of the free world, and we expect Belize to do the same.
In international news, Hamas says the 4-day pause in fighting between them and Israel will begin at 10 a.m. on Thursday. Under the agreement, 50 Israeli hostages taken by Hamas will be released and 150 Palestinian women and teenagers held in Israel jails freed. Here's more from Al Jazeera.
It comes after weeks of negotiations mediated by Qatar. Netanyahu has vowed to continue the war.
There is idle talk outside, as if after the truce to return our abductees will stop the war. So I'd like to make it clear we are at war and will continue with the war. We'll continue until we achieve all our objectives, eliminate Hamas, return all our abductees and missing persons, and ensure there'll be no element in Gaza that threatens Israel.
Let's get the view from occupied East Jerusalem. Hamda Salhout joins us live from there. So Hamda, despite some opposition, the vote finally went through. What more do we know about the deal?
Right, Marlene, after around 6 hours of discussions and debate in the Israeli parliament, the vote finally went through to accept this deal that will see the release of 50 captives who are women and children in exchange for a 4-day pause in the fighting. However, the Israeli government statement did not stipulate any of the conditions that they have agreed to for the Palestinians, but it rather went on to say that they are hoping to release all of their captives and that this is a step in the right direction. However, in the statement Hamas released shortly after the Israeli government's decision, they released a lot of the details that were reportedly part of the negotiations, which include the release of 50 captives who are women and children, the release of 150 Palestinian prisoners who are women and children, a complete pause in the fighting. This means that Israel will not allow any military vehicles into Gaza. There will be no drones flying over the southern part of the Gaza Strip for the entirety of the 4 days. And for the northern part of the Gaza Strip, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for those 6 hours, there will be no air traffic there. Additionally, Hamas has said that Israel agreed to not attack or arrest any Palestinian fighters inside of the Gaza Strip for these 4 days, asking, additionally, they said, for hundreds of trucks of humanitarian aid and fuel, and additionally freedom of movement for Palestinians on Salah ad-Din Road, where we have seen hundreds of thousands of Palestinians go from the north to the south, evacuating that heavy Israeli bombardment.
In sports, Jamaica's Reggae Boys have won a spot in the semi-finals of the Copa America CONCACAF Nations League set for March 2024. The boys won Tuesday's match against Canada 3-2 at the BMO Field in Toronto. It was a come-from-behind win after their 2-1 loss in the first leg at the National Stadium in Kingston on Saturday. It was Jamaica's first ever win over Canada in Canada, and they were rewarded with a spot in their third Copa America, joining the USA and Panama in the semifinals of the league. And that's the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Thank you so much for watching.